Okay.
All right.
Hey, Rabbi, this is Josh in Dallas. Can I just say one thing real quick?
You can say whatever you like. We're very open in this chat room. Yes.
It's actually two things. One is I apologize for having to jump off abruptly in the last couple of calls. I had another call at 11 and I have another one at 11 today. So there's no kind of disrespect or anything. I usually would like to say goodbye, but sometimes that doesn't happen. But more importantly, substantively, I just want to tell you, and I've talked about this with David Zoller, what you're teaching us is just kind of phenomenal. You know, David and I have learned together for 15, maybe going on 20 years, everything from Chumash to Talmud to Gemara to you name it. And it seems kind of silly that we have spent so much time on different aspects of learning without having this class first, because this class seems like it should be a prerequisite to all other types of learning to get a foundation for how to learn. And so just wanted to thank you for that.
Well, I wholeheartedly agree. And one of my amazing discoveries, really, my Rebbe, my Rosh Hashiva, Reb Mordechai Goldstein, was that someone actually wrote a very good introduction to learning. And I don't know why more people don't experience it, but we've translated, we put it out. I have a website, and Baruch Hashem that we have people interested, and it really is, as you said. I mean, it should be a prerequisite for everybody, but people are not aware that such things exist. So,
well, they are now.
Yeah, well, Baruch Hashem. I left a lot of the information on the site, and as we go through the learning, we're going to integrate more and more of the information. I found that if we give the information at first, it becomes too overwhelming. So it's better to integrate it into an actual text, and then we can uncover it slowly. That's
even last night, David and I were in another Torah class, a Parsha class, and the opening question that the rabbi asked was why is everything repeated again? And the basically the factual stuff that's in this week's Parsha is basically repeated. It had previously been provided in the Chumash. And first question came to my mind was what we learned last week with one of our ways to break down and simply ask the question, why are things repeated? I mean, it's not exactly what we learned, but it's still, the whole point is you're learning, we're already applying it to other learning, and it just makes everything so much more understandable.
Fantastic. I'm very happy. David, can I ask you to turn on my screen sharing?
Of course,
so we can look at my screen.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Josh, I had the same experience as you. Just beginning to, and then it teaches you like what the correct glasses are to put on when you read a text. It's like you start naturally thinking like, well, if it said this and it didn't say this and this extra word, and it teaches you how to think when you're learning. So I'm totally with you. I'm glad you're having that experience.
Fantastic. Now, I wanted to bring this Rashi to you just as a very brief introduction. I always like to start with something exciting. Rashi on this pasuk in Shemos, V'yomer Hashem Moshe alai el ha'ara. Hashem says to Moshe, come up to the mountain. V'haya sham, and I will be there. Ve'etna lecha es luchos ha'even. I'm going to give you these tablets of stone, Torah and the Torah, mitzvos and the commandments, asher katafti laharosam, which I have written to teach you. Unbelievable. We don't know what we're beholding here when we read the Torah. This is Hashem's personal communication with you and me and all of Klal Yisrael. Fantastic. But there's a lot of extra words here. And Rashi goes through all the extra words, but I just wanted to bring you one very interesting Rashi here. He says, Et luchos ha'even v'hatorah v'amitzvos asher katafti laharosam. Rashi always quotes, we're going to learn that's the basic way that all the commentaries work. You always quote what you want to comment on and then quote. What does he say here? Kol sheish ma'ot v'shlosha esrei mitzvos bichlal esaras hadibros hen. Anyone want to translate that? You have the translation on the left. What does that say? A remarkable statement.
All the mitzvahs are in the. All the mitzvahs
What?
are in it. All the mitzvahs are in these 10 statements.
Unbelievable statement. Now, if you looked at my introduction, I hope people did spend some time with that. I talk about a compression file. Everybody knows a zip file. Everyone's involved in computering. And in order to transfer information, what these programs do is create a mathematical formula that will compress the information. And then you apply that formula and the information is uncompressed. Well, what is the highest level of compression that we know in the world? It's in this Rashi. All the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah exist in the Esa HaDibros. Did you believe it? These few words contain with them all the 613 mitzvahs. That means all that information is compressed into those words. Now, it's a remarkable statement. What we're trying to do in our study is to learn the formulas that are used to decompress the information. When the information is very compressed, like in a zip file or in the Esadibros, it's not accessible because it's too highly compressed. But when you understand the analogs, the way to apply the uncompression or decompression formulas, then every mitzvah will have its very clearly defined gather, which means that we'll know exactly if we're doing the mitzvah or not doing the mitzvah, if we're doing chas v'shalom or the avera or not doing the avera. Okay, so what we're trying to learn is what are those systems. So in that first article that I did, I spoke about a lot of the systems that the Torah uses to compress information. So those people that would like to look at it, I don't want to spend the time on it, but please look at it because it gives you an idea how big the Torah is and how much information is contained with it. This is not a story by, it's not Huckleberry Finn. This is the words of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and it has in it not only the mitzvahs that we have to do, but all the creation, all the formulas for creation of the universe. In the first line of the Torah, what does it say? Bereshis bara Elokim et hashamayim et haaretz. Rashi says Bereshis means for, can mean for. For the Rashis, Hashem created the heavens and the earth. Who are the Rashis? The Rashis are Klal Yisrael. The Rashis are the Bikurim. And the Rashis is the Torah, and he gives proofs. But you can also look at that first sentence, Bereshis. The base is in Hebrew is also with, W-I-T-H. So it says Bereshis, with the Rashis, and the Rashis is the Torah. With the Torah, Bora Hashem et Hashem, the Kodesh Baruch Hu created the heavens and the earth. So we're talking about a tremendously compressed document and deep document that includes in it all physical and spiritual reality. Now, we cannot have access to all that. I'm certainly in the past people did have, Moshe Rabbeinu had, but after 3,300 years of going through the material world, what we focused on is what does the Kadosh Baruch Hu wants us to do. So we want the clarity of how to do those 613 mitzvahs. A lot of them we haven't been merited to do yet because the temple was taken away from us. But there's a lot of mitzvahs, Pesach's coming up, that are within our hands to do. So the idea here is to understand how to unpack or uncompress or decompress the information. So let's look at a live example of another Rashi. Okay,
Rabbi, can I jump in for a second?
yes.
Something's popping
Jump,
up for
please
me.
jump.
Something that made just a huge difference in my emunah that the rabbi answered for me once. Like I had questions related to like, predestination and free will and some of these different things that were very difficult for me. And the rabbi gave me like a 1 minute response related to levels based on the level that we're at. Can the rabbi quickly give that over? Is that possible? I think it's good timing for us to hear that quick.
About the levels that we're at, I really.
You don't remember? Basically, the response was like, Moshe got up to 49. You never get to 50, and we're at like level negative 43. So as we ascend levels, we're able to make sense more of things that. But okay, fine. If the rabbi doesn't.
Oh, okay. Besides that, no, that's true also. I mean, that's something that people don't appreciate. The Torah is an amazing document because everyone could read it. I mean, okay, you have to know Hebrew, but it's translated in English, but it's accessible. If you read any other literature, it's poetic, it's symbolic, it's very local in its discussions of reality. The Torah is tremendously large. It starts with the creation of the whole universe and ends with us coming into Eretz Israel. And in that document, we have not only all this information compressed, but as you said, and you want to repeat here, that there's levels of attainment. So it looks as if it's very simple to read, and it's deceptively simple. E equals MC squared is also deceptively simple. It took Einstein many blackboards to come to that conclusion. So it's an amazing document because if you read a mathematical exposition, you won't be even on first base. But the Torah has this mystical ability to speak to everyone on their level. That being said, we cannot minimize the Torah to our level. We have to realize that it's a path of growth and understanding, which leads us to the deeper level. So I hope that is what you want me to bring out. Okay, so now let's review here very quickly. This is Dr. Gemara, a fantastic sefer. He's going to explain a very important point here, which is the Klal Gadol and Eon. Okay, I hope you see my screen. I hope everyone. Is that right? Did I share my screen? You are sharing your screen.
Yes, we can see.
Yeah, great, fantastic. Okay, so last week we looked at the theory. We're going to now apply it. Okay, just as a review, there are the Kodesh Baruch Hu is communicating to us through the words of the Torah. That's what we just read. I wrote the Torah, says Hashem. Okay, and this is how I'm going to communicate to you and teach you what I would like you to do in this universe. Fantastic statement, black and white. Now, the Torah, as we said, is highly compressed. What are the things that we look for in order to start decompressing the very precise message in the Torah? So there's two things that we have to look out for. One is called Lashon and the other one is called Inyan. What is the difference between Lashon and Inyan? Anyone want to take a stab at it? A little bit of review, but I want you to engage with this. What's the difference between Lashon and Inyan? Anyone have an idea?
Lashon would be the specific words being spoken, and Inyan would be the general subject matter that's being discussed.
Almost. Very good. The Lashon, you got 100%. That means the physical black and white words on the page. Okay? That's the specific language being used. Inyan is the concept that is being expressed by the language. So I could say the same thing in many different ways. I could talk about Mr. Smith. I could talk about Rabbi Shmuel. I could talk about, and let's say it's the same person, right? I could say the person who's over there that's 6 feet tall, or I could say the person who came to my class. There's a lot of ways you could describe an individual. Okay, that's called the inyan that I want to talk about. the words that I use to describe that particular individual is called the language that I use. A very important distinction here. There's the words that I use and the concept that I'm trying to communicate to you, okay? So we're going to see this as we go along, but I just want to make that very important distinction, because if you look at these first three levels of decompression, you'll see that they're all based on the black and white words and the concept. So the first thing we want to look at is Yitur Lashon. Is there any extra language in the text that we're studying? Number two, is there repetition of concept in the text we're studying? Is he saying, is the words, even though they may be different, really just telling us the same concept twice? Number two, is there some new information in the concept? I can't be even if the words are not extraneous and the idea is not repetitious, but is it something that I would not have known before? Is it a chiddush? Everything that the Torah, when Hashem gives us the Torah, very important, he's come to tell us new information. If Einstein or Aristotle or whoever you want to say is a chacham knows that, the Torah is not come to teach us that. Okay, it's not come to teach us that. It's come to teach us something new, a new way, a new element. We say in the mitzvahs, Asher kiddishanu b'mitzvasav. What does that mean? Hashem kiddishanu. What does kiddishanu mean? He made us holy, friends. Holy, holy. He gave us a dimension called Kodesh. Okay, so all the mitzvahs come to elevate us to this level of kedusha. A person who is not involved in the Torah could be a very nice person, but he doesn't have this element called kedusha. He doesn't interact with the creator of the universe and become elevated to that level. So every concept that we're going to learn here through the words has to elevate us to a higher level of interaction. Okay, that's called chiddush, and the chiddush has to be in the subject matter and the content, and also in the words. The last thing we're looking for is changes, shinui lashon, din, or inyan. We are looking for inconsistency, so to speak. When we speak, we always have what's called transitional phrases. Okay, that means that chapter 1 is connected to chapter 2, is connected to chapter 3. Okay, so we should see a flow of information that's logical. If we see some flow of information that's illogical, we ask ourselves, well, why did Hashem do that? Okay. If we see laws that change and they look apparently to be talking about the same information, we say, hey, wait a minute, we just learned that law and it was different than we learned now. So what's going on? Okay. Also, if subject matter changes, why is there a transition from this subject to that subject? Okay. And I said last week, Manashtana is the first lesson we teach the children, the 4 questions. What's different? Why is it different? That's an engagement question. That's a question that we have to be taught to ask. Okay. Now, after you've made those observations, you have to do 3 activities: Dorish, Choker, V'Shoel. Dorish means you have to explain inconsistencies or extra language, right? You have to take a shot at it, even though you might not be fully prepared to understand the depth. It's very important to take a shot at everything, because the growth happens when you try to explain something and then compare your explanation with the great rabbis and see what they saw that you didn't see. But it always starts with a personal involvement. What do I think it says? The words have meaning. Black words have meaning. Okay. All right. So we always have to say, what does the simple meaning of the words mean? That's called, and if I see a consistency, why is that an inconsistency? Okay, that's Dorish, Choker, investigate, and then you have to ask questions. Okay. That's why the Haggadah, why don't we just tell the kids, this is a great day, Hashem took us out of Egypt? No, we have to have them ask, because asking means that you're involved and you're engaged.
Rabbi, those sort of go together, right? Like if you're seeing inconsistencies and you're asking questions, they go hand in hand, sort of.
That's right. When you see an inconsistency, you can't be quiet. You have to raise your hand.
Right. Okay.
But it's very important because the Torah is not inconsistent. Kodesh Baruch Hu, he didn't, the sun doesn't come up one day in the west and one day in the east and one day in the north. There's a consistency in the material world, and there's also consistency, of course, in his world. Great, in his Torah world. Now, the other job you have to do, Gimel, is always get down to the source law. Okay, like we're going to be going into this whole problem of money and value and the relationship of money and value. So we have to get down to the source first. What is money? And then we can talk about what is value, because value is based on money. What I mean by value is Shaveh Kesef. Okay, so we're going to get into those things. But here we go. Here is our hands-on application. Okay. So we did this last week together.
We have not started this yet. No.
We didn't start. Okay. Here's another Rashi. Rashi is an unbelievable master of the Torah system. It's unbelievable. The more you get into it and know Rashi, you realize how great he is. Okay, but he's a master. He could be one of the undisputed masters of Torah. So what I'm going to do is now give our class the opportunity to fill in this chart. What does this chart talk about? So we spoke about, we can look at I've made this chart developed by using these books that eventually we'll slowly get involved in, okay? And then we're going to fill in the Pesukim into this chart, okay? And then we're going to notice if there's any changes. So here we go. On this side, we're going to talk about two verses. One verse is going to be in Shemot 21:12, and the other verse is going to be in Shemot 24:17. Okay, here are the two verses in English and Hebrew. In Hebrew, Ma ke'ishu meis mos yumas, a man who strikes, one who strikes, we'll get into that, a man gets the death penalty. And the other pasuk says, V'ish ki yakeh, when a man strikes kol nefesh, any soul of a man will surely be put to death. Okay. Now, when we analyze, yes, go ahead, please. Great.
I apologize for interrupting. Before we get into the nuts and bolts here, this outline that you've gone over that we've finished just now above this with Aleph, Bet, Gimel, and so forth with Leshon, Inyun, and so forth, is that outline available in both English and Hebrew, where you've got the Hebrew terms here and there's English translation available also to those of us who haven't spent years in Sfat or Yerushalayim and may not know just the Hebrew on its own?
I have made a special directory for our class, okay, which will send you out the link. It'll be on Google Drive, my Google Drive, and as we go through our class, you'll be able to access all the information. Okay. Plus, we also have. I trust that our good friend Reb David there is doing the recordings. And you'll also be able to hear, if you miss a class or you want to go over something, the recording. So all the information will be there for our
and I'll say seemingly what we're doing right now is we're taking that information and now we're putting it into action. So I actually had a couple things that just popped out at me right away based on the rules of the game that we just learned. Is it okay if I just speak out a couple things from those two pasukim?
Okay, but before we do that, I want everyone to engage. First of all, to understand what this chart is, and then I will ask people to fill out the chart, okay?
Fine.
So we'll fill out the chart together, okay? But the point is, over here is the column. Everyone knows what a spreadsheet is, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Here's a column called verse, correct? And we're going to be comparing the following two verses and looking at looking for what Reb Yitzhak Kambatel told us to look for. Make those observations. Okay, so first we notice that the Torah talks in cases of nosei and mishpat. You see these two last words here, nosei and mishpat. Nosei and mishpat means case and law. You see? So whatever we're going to analyze, you're going to have to tell me, well, what case are we talking about and what law does Hashem want us to do, okay? Doesn't matter if it's Pesach and that's the case. What are we supposed to do on Pesach, okay? Tell me, what does he want us to do on Pesach? So we're going to have to know, well, tell me what the mitzvahs are, what those laws, those cases are, and tell me, well, what do you want to do with them? What time, what place, how, okay? So that's the basic fundamental breakdown of Torah, is we always have to identify a case in law. For those people that hated grammar like myself, in school, I used to call that subject and predicate, okay? But that's what it is. You can't have intelligible speech without talking about something and saying something about it. That's the way it is. If I say black, I have not communicated any idea. If I say light, I haven't communicated anything. If I say the light is on, so then I talked about a subject called the light, and I'm telling you something about it, that it has been turned on. So all intelligible speech has to have a subject and a predicate. In Hebrew, a nosei and a nasu. This is taken from Darkei Gemara. That's the foundation. So when we're talking about Torah, we have a specific type of predication called a law. So we always have to look for the case, and then what is the law that we're supposed to do in that situation, okay? So that's the basic foundation. Now, in case, in this large category here of case, we're going to break that down to this next green, 4 categories of green. And we're going to talk in Hebrew, it's the poel, the pu'ula, the hefel, the mesubav, those 4 parts, okay? Which means the poel is the actor. I want to know who's doing the action. That's the first thing I want to know. Second, what action is that person doing? Okay, okay. Third, who is receiving that action? Okay, is it eating matzah? That would be the matzah is receiving the action of eating. And what is the result? So now, if those are the 4 things, let's start here with the first pasuk. The first pasuk says, Maka meis, Maka ishu meis mos yumas. Maka means what? Makeh. Anyone know
Hit.
a little Hebrew?
Hit,
Hit. It says hit. Ish,
man,
hit man. Go ahead. Umeis.
resulting in or something.
What's mace? Mita.
My
Like
Hebrew's not so good.
A dead person, a mace. It's mace.
A mace. He hit man and dies. Okay. Mate means death. Okay. And here's the law. Mot yumas means he shall surely be put to death. It's a double use of the word movet, to be put to death. Okay. So now I'll ask you, gentlemen, in this first pasuk, who is doing the action?
Ish, man, a person, an individual, a human, an individual. It doesn't. It's not.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
Because the action. Well, I don't actually know that. I guess it says it's an action that is hitting someone else, so it has to be done by an individual. So that verb is that action is applied to a human being, male or female, I guess.
Well, you're now starting to apply that action, but the real truth is, you don't know what that action. You don't know who did the act.
Right. Okay.
You don't know. It doesn't say. It says, a hitter of a man, and that man dies, has to die. Okay. So now we can presume who's hitting, but we don't really know who's hitting. Okay. In other words, put it this way: the words, the lashon, we're looking here at lashon. Lashon means the physical words in this sentence don't tell us who is doing the activity. Okay, it's not identified. I'm going to just put a couple of dashes there. Okay.
Sorry, let me just ask.
Go ahead, please.
In Hebrew
Yes.
lashon, Maka, is there feminine and masculine that you could know if it's like a man or a woman doing the hitting, or Maka is just unspecified?
Well, okay. Many times in Hebrew, the male verb will be used for anyone.
Okay.
Male. In other words, it could mean man or woman. Okay. It just means.
But could it
Okay.
mean a
Let's get
monkey?
an easier question.
Could it be a monkey?
Rebavi, who got hit?
Ish.
Oh, very good. So here you see, we just go here, Control C with this. Isn't that funny? And we put him over here, right? He's the victim.
No, yeah, victim, yeah.
The victim. Okay. Now, what was the action that was done by the actor?
Hit and killed.
Who?
Hit and killed.
That is not what we call the action. That's called
The result.
the result. So we're going to skip, since you liked it, we're going to talk about mace as the result. That's the result of the victim getting hit, correct? Okay, but what action did he do? What action did the actor do?
Machot yomet.
He just hit him.
That's right, the word makeh. He hit him, right? Makeh means to hit someone, like the Eser Makos, that the 10 plagues, it means the 10 hits. That's what it really means. Hashem hit the Egyptians 10 times. So makeh means to strike someone, okay? That's what makeh means. So the law is what? Ave, know what's the law?
Mos yamus.
Fantastic. Now, that's also extra words, isn't it?
In Hebrew, a double lashon is used to indicate emphasis.
Ah, very good. Okay. So you really, you just say yumat, right? He shall die. The fact it says mot yumat is an extra word, mot
right.
yumat. You could have said yumat.
Right.
And what you're presenting is that, well, there's a lot of times in Hebrew that the Torah doubles the verb.
Yeah, but I wasn't meaning to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but I wasn't meaning to suggest that we don't need to give a reason as to why the pasuk feels it necessary to be emphatic here. Simply pointing out that the grammatical usage of a double, of a doubling up like that has that effect. But there's still the question of, well, why does the pasuk find it necessary? Why does Hashem find it necessary to communicate emphasis with emphasis over here?
Fantastic.
Wait, can I say that a little?
Yes, please.
So it sounds like what Avi's saying is that when it's expressed that it's an emphasis, and so then we need to understand why there was an emphasis. Why did it not just say, okay,
exactly.
Fine.
What do we say in Kriyat Shema? Ve'im shemoa tishma'u.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
If you will listen very well, yeah.
Exactly, very well. Okay. So there's listening, and there's listening very well. And as Avi said, well, why do we have to know this very well?
Yeah, and in this case, it makes less sense because once you kill somebody, they're dead. You can't really kill them. There's no levels to being dead.
Exactly. How can you kill him more? You shall make sure he's certainly dead. You know, his head is chopped off or something. No more heart.
Well, maybe
brain damage is not good enough.
But actually, maybe it refers to a means of killing him. Maybe that's actually
fantastic. Actually, you're on track. Very good. Good theories. You're going to see that that's going to represent a certain type of death. Beautiful. We have 4 types of death in Torah. Very good. But we're going to get involved in that. Now, let's look at the second pasuk. The second pasuk says, "Ve'ish ki yekeh kol nefesh adam mos yumas." Who is the actor in that second pasuk? Let's get the Hebrew. Ve'ish, a man. Ki yekeh, when he strikes. Kol nefesh adam, any soul of a man. Mos yumas, he shall be put to death. Okay. So who is the actor in this case? David, who's the actor?
Ish, man.
Very good. I don't see your, oh, you're not showing us.
I am. Yeah, you should be able to see me.
Oh, I don't see you there. Okay, doesn't matter. The ish. Okay, so the actor here, is that correct? Ish, the ish. Okay, what is
But,
the action with the ish?
I actually wouldn't say the ish. I would say ish.
Oh, great! You saw an extra letter.
Yeah.
What does ve'ish mean? Any?
The ish means and a man. Ish means a man, right? And means and a man. So we have to know what is this vav chibor. That vav chibor means an and. Why and when is that used in Torah? Okay, that's a connective.
So I would have thought it's connecting something back to what we would have to know what came before it is sort of my initial.
Great, excellent. That's called looking at things in context. Okay. Very important to look at things in context because you can only know the transitions, the connection of ideas if you look at the ideas in context. Okay, so it's a very important thing that we would have to do to see why this vav is here. Okay, va'ish. Okay, good. Right now we're doing what's called roet, observation. Okay, we're supposed to be observant Jews. First thing you have to do is learn how to observe, but you have to know what to observe. Right? Person can look at a beautiful painting and say, oh, I see nice colors. But if he's trained, he understands the form, the shape, the greatness of the artist. So when it comes to communication with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, we see these nice little words here. Fine, very holy words, but we have to be trained to decompress the messages here. Okay, so let's go. Next word. What is the action that this ish is doing? Josh, join in. What's the action this ish is doing? How's your Hebrew, Josh? Oh, I don't hear you. I don't hear your sound.
Sorry about that. My Hebrew is mediocre. I apologize for having to leave and come back. You may have noticed. I've got
nope. Okay.
I've got 3 dogs, one of which is a senior citizen who's incontinent, and one of which is a puppy. And when they need to go out, they need to go out.
Okay.
Anyway, so the action here. Sorry about that.
No problem. What is the action?
The action here is striking. Let me see. The Hebrew word is let's see. Looks like I'm not sure which word is strike in this pasuk.
Okay, who's going to help out?
I think Yake would be he will strike.
That's right. Yake. Yake is to strike. He will strike, right?
Okay. So it's a
Okay,
slightly
that's-
different form of strike than
Oh.
the previous.
Ooh.
Oh, very good.
I was
I'm
seeing
sorry, I
that
should have
too.
done.
Yeah. Maka versus Yike.
Yeah, it didn't just say ish ki. It's ish yake. Could have said. He says ish the ish ki yake. What does ki yake mean?
When he will strike.
Right. That's called a
Future.
That's called what?
Ah,
Yeah, but it's
yeah.
called a conditional, right?
Oh, if he will strike.
Right. So it's a conditional. Okay, but so the action is makeh with this extra word in the conditional, right? The first sentence didn't have a conditional, right? The second does. Okay. Now, who's the
Wait, so
victim
let
in
me,
this-
sorry, Rabbi.
Yes, please.
What's happening here, just to put this in the context, is we have 2 psukim that appear to be very, very similar, but we're doing an analysis now because we know that they can't be telling us the same thing. So at a quick glance, they look like they're saying the same thing, but we know the Torah doesn't repeat itself. Is that correct to say?
That's correct.
Okay.
If I look at is the media and the message. If I look at the inyan of sentence number 1 and the inyan of sentence number 2, what would I say the inyan of 1 and 2 are talking about?
Same thing to me.
Now spell it out.
Well, the same thing. I mean, the inyan is how it's being said, right? So it's not the same thing.
Very good. But as far as the how it's being said is different, but what is being said looks to be the same thing. It appears because we know, because we just been learned. Everyone here now is jump the level of his Torah education. We know there can't be a repetition of ideas, correct?
Well, they're not in order
So,
anyway. They're in separate places. It's sort of like making Bakal Bakomer or some other reference, because it says it one place and it says it in another, but they're not together with each other.
well, that would really be dramatic if they were right after each other, right?
I hear.
I mean, that'd be very dramatic. But these things are far away from each other. One is in Shemot and one is in Vayikra. Now, I don't think the Kodesh Baruch Hu forgot what he wrote in Shemot when he was in Vayikra. Do we all agree on that?
Probably.
Most probably. Okay. All right. So for us, we say, okay, these two things seem to be saying the same thing, but as we learned last week and this week we reviewed, we have to see changes in nuance, because those changes in nuance is going to be teaching us new information.
But I think what David was pointing out is that there's going to be connections between them, the same way we did Gezei Reshava and Kal V'chomer. Going to be connection of the words.
Yes, you could do that. If it was talking about different people, you could do that. You could make Kal V'chomers. Yes, you could theoretically. I agree with you.
Right.
You could do that. That's another way we would decompress the information. But excuse me.
It's like a hyperlink to the definition in another part of the Torah. I mean, it's
fantastic.
Mapping
yes, these two pasukim are hyperlinked. They really are. Even though to the untrained eye, when he was in Shemot, he doesn't know what's going on in Vayikra. But we said the Kodesh Baruch Hu has hyperlinked his whole Torah. So these two things are linked and interacting. Now, how they're going to interact is going to be a second level question. That's going to be the Darish V'choker part of the question. That's when we start explaining the Pasukim. Right now, we're doing the first activity, which is called observing. Okay? Observing. Anyone heard of Gigo? Gigo is an old computer terms, meaning garbage in, garbage out. A computer's result is only as good as the information you put in, is the data that you put in, okay? So the first thing that we have to do is be very careful in our observation in the Torah. Then, once we have good observations, we can then go to the part of Dorish to explain the connection of the parts, okay? But at the beginning, we have to first do data collection and make sure we're doing it carefully. Good. So we had, now who's the victim in the second pasuk?
Any human being.
That's right. Kol nefesh adam. Okay.
So it's interesting that, first of all, before we use the term ish, and now we're using the term adam, but furthermore, why mention kol nefesh, right? That's like, it seems to be redundant again.
Exactly. What's the difference between ish and kol nefesh? There's actually two redundancies here, okay? We don't really need this word call. You with me?
Mm-hmm.
In Hebrew, when you make a simple statement and you say, for instance, Nashim chayavis b'kiddush hayom. Do you know what that means? Yeah, Reb David. Nashim chayavis b'kiddush hayom.
I don't know.
Reb Avi, I'm sorry.
Nashim chayavos. What? I didn't hear the last part.
B'kiddush hayom.
Women are obligated in the sanctification of the day.
Yes, which means that women also have to hear Kiddush.
Right.
Okay.
In reference to that.
Okay.
So it means all women.
It doesn't say call women, right? It doesn't say all women, but it's understood by the singular of women, that means all women, okay? So a lot of times, even though a statement does not say the word all, it means all, okay? So
but isn't nashim plural, and over here nefesh is singular?
Oh, that's another very good observation here. Okay, but if it would have said "Ve'ish ki yakeh nefesh adam," would you have said that's talking about a particular nefesh adam, or would you say it really means all the nefesh adam?
I would say that it means all, but the reason why would be because adam is like mankind. So that would have like a plural.
Boy.
That would have a plural connotation.
Oh boy, Rev Avi, we have a big problem now. What's the difference between nefesh and adam?
Nefesh is an aspect of soul, and Adam is an aspect of man.
But doesn't it say together the soul of man?
Right. Yeah. That is.
I mean, could you kill a man, but that doesn't have a soul? Could you kill a man that doesn't have a soul?
Can we use, Gezerah Shava to see where Adam and Nefesh are used elsewhere and what they might mean in terms of
you guys are all right. You know, I mean, we're gonna have to Google.
I was also thinking we can use diukim, is that if you say man, that would only include man, but maybe like inference. But if you say any human being, that can include maybe like children, women, slaves, that type of thing.
Okay, so call by you should know, by the way, the use of call is a rule here. I'm telling you. The use of call is always a rebuoy. It's always coming to add something. Okay, that's the way, that's the system. It's inside information. Whenever we see call, it's coming to expand the borders of the topic you're talking about. Because as we said, normally, if you don't use call, it means call. If I say women are obligated to say Kiddush, it means all women. So when you say all women, inside information rule that it's coming to add some woman that you wouldn't thought was in that box, okay? That's the word call, okay? Okay, good. Now it has to be a nefesh adam. How could you kill someone without a nefesh?
Maybe one's referring to Jewish people, not Jewish people, but instead of us guessing, I mean, is there other sources where these are explained and it's generally agreed upon what they refer to? Ish and Adam?
Gosh, now you understand what type of teacher I am. I'm a teacher that gives you the tools to do the investigation. After you exhaust yourself, then you're going to do all the research. But when you do the research, you'll do what's called, my Rebbe used to call conscious learning. You'll understand why people talk. Instead of just reading and parroting back what people say, you'll say, now I know why Rashi said what he said. It's because of this change of language. That's called critical thinking. Thank you, Toby.
Rabbi, is just a kind of a dumb question, but would we say that an idol worshiper doesn't have a nefesh?
Oh, that's a very good question. What is the getter of nefesh? Okay. Now, there's ruach, nefesh. What else? Ruach, nefesh, neshama. There's one more. Ruach, nefesh, neshama, and the chiyah. Yeah, we have 5 different.
Chaya yechida.
Chaya and yechida. So we have 5 different terms relating to nefesh. Okay. Of those 5 terms, we'd have to now analyze what is the nefesh part of the adam. That's a good question. Is that only a Jew has a nefesh or
yeah?
Well, yes, go ahead.
Generally, nefesh refers to guf, the body, but I believe that there are instances in which nefesh actually means neshama, which is the soul, the transcendent soul. So I don't know that you could really lock it down to one or the other.
What about the other
great.
On and of itself.
Okay, so let's leave that for research. Yes, David, do you want to say something? I'm sorry.
What do the other ones mean? I'm sorry, I don't have the Hebrew as well as you guys. So
okay, don't worry about it. Don't worry. We'll give you. I think Avi will give a class in Kabbalah and I'll explain all the 5. Okay.
It's just prerequisite knowledge if you live in Spot for a few years,
Yeah,
exactly. Everyone's talking about it. That's what they do.
Already.
You'll have to come over here and join the crowd. Okay, good research question.
But
okay,
Rabbi, is now a good point that like it seems like what we're getting into is boundaries and borders. That like if something costs $1, then you can buy it for $1.50, but you cannot buy it for 99 cents. It seems like that's we're teaching by teaching what the outer limit is. Is that correct to say in terms of knowing?
Well, exactly. This is definitely the border.
Okay.
Now the question is, what border is it? But it's definitely a border, and that's what David was asking. What does the border normally mean? Okay, now that's one of the great ways of learning is by looking at this word used in other contexts and see if there's a universal use of the word. Okay, But we're going to hold
But-
off on that question because
but Rabbi,
yes, what do you want to say?
I would
Okay.
I would argue that coming back to the pasuk for a second, I would
Yes.
argue that nefesh is also seemingly, respectfully, with let's not say redundant. Let's say nefesh is also coming to add something to the pasuk, because I don't see why you couldn't maintain the pshat sense of the pasuk by saying ve'ish ki yake adam mais yumas. Now it would be a little
Exactly,
weird.
great.
It would feel better maybe
No,
saying
well, I
ve'ish
don't
ki
know.
yake ish.
In the other pasuk said we said ish maka ish, and the other one, so why ish maka adam? Okay,
Exactly.
why not?
Well,
We could get away with that.
Exactly. I mean, it's a funny change from the first ish, ve'ish ki yake. You would just think it would say ish. But the fact that it changes to Adam
Oh.
signifies something, which we said already. But even without that question, I still don't see why nefesh is also, because when we say Adam, we are including somebody with a soul. You could say, you could ask the
Fantastic.
question, can we kill somebody without also killing his nefesh? And I'm going to ask you, can we kill a person without killing his nefesh? Meaning, Adam includes nefesh as well.
Exactly.
So-
The word adam, normally when we talk about adam, we don't talk about killing a dead man.
Right.
So
Right.
The word nefesh seems to be extraneous completely.
Yeah.
Seems to be extraneous. Okay. And adam is what we call a shinui lashon, because on the shinui lashon meant what? What did we say shinui lashon meant?
A change in language, because we saw ish in the other one and we see
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
there's three
So-
different changes, it looks like. Obviously,
Exactly. Three
nefesh
different
and
changes.
even Adam is going to be fine.
Exactly. Okay, let's talk about the result. What is the result in the second verse? What happens when the Ika kol nefesh adam? What is the result?
I don't think it says. Am I mistaken?
What does it say here? Ish ki yakeh kol nefesh adam. Oh, it doesn't say anything. We don't know the result. Oh boy, we don't know the result.
See, this is why the English never works, right, Josh? We've been learning all this in English. We don't have any clue what we're doing. It's so interesting.
Yes, I hate to tell you, you're seeing a shadow of what you're doing. You got to get into the words. That's why even if we take a few words and analyze them, it's better than just reading English. English does
What are
not
those last two words
convey
of the sentence there? Mat.
most you must, but there's a space here because it doesn't say what happens to the human being. You see, and if a man strikes any human being, you see, but it doesn't even in English. And if a man strikes any human being, what happens to the human being?
Right.
Do we know what
the
happens?
law without the action? He's giving
Not without the result of the
the
action.
result. The result. Sorry, that's what I meant.
We don't know what happened to that human being. It's not stated. In the
Right.
first pasuk, it said the human being died from the hit. In this pasuk, it's a blank. It doesn't tell us what it is.
Right. So potentially
Correct.
someone's just hitting someone and he's being put to death. He's giving someone a little punch and he's getting put to death for it.
Well, maybe
Yeah.
this has to do with the involuntary manslaughter thing. Like if the axe handle flies, if the axe head flies off the handle. I know there's some other things where an inadvertent accident that causes death results in a halacha that is required to put someone to death.
Wow.
Or
Maybe
not.
that's why it says ki yake instead of yake.
Rabbi, is
Maybe
that
that's
correct?
what-
Is this the pasuk for what is it called? B'shogeg? Is this
Manslaughter, I guess.
B'shogeg, like when it's accidental death? Is this related to that, Rabbi?
I love to encourage engagement. Great. It just so happens it's not applicable, but it's a good engagement. A good.
All right.
That's what you have to keep doing. And now we're going to have to compare this. It's just if it's true what I'm saying, you have to say, well, how do you know that? Okay, we're going to have to discover that, and then we're going to have to say, why do we need this pasuk and that pasuk? And what's the
Right.
difference?
Rabbi, in terms of
Okay.
timing, David Zoller has to get back to work in 3 minutes. So a way that we could kind of just be
Okay, so just 1 second. What's the law in the second pasuk, David? What's the law?
That
before
those
you get
last
back
two
to work.
words.
What is that? Most you must, correct?
Most you must.
Any difference between the first law?
He's just getting put to death. He's not surely getting put to death.
Well, surely is an English
surely,
word.
most you must.
Wait, it doesn't say, but it does. Why is the English translation not say that? He shall be put to death, and the other one says she shall surely be put to death.
Again, we can't rely on the English, David.
I know,
that's the problem.
I
This is
know.
the beauty of the Hebrew. This is what's opened up for me like immensely, and I realized just how weak I am because I don't have the. But look at the two words; they're exactly the same on top of each other under the law.
Right.
When we sentence diagram this, it's like it crystallizes, even though I don't even know exactly how to define it in English translation. I'm understanding now that the law is the same, and so therefore I can link those two.
David, I want to say something that's just related to what you're saying. Maybe Rev Tchaikovsky could even chime in for a second, but Rabbi Tchaikovsky's Chavrusa, Rabbi Green, Shlita, former Rosh Hashiva in Eretz Yisrael, he said that he would actually go to Shiurim in a different language, and using these methodologies, he could pick up on the differences just using logic based on changes in words and that type of thing. So I think that's precisely what we're. Yeah.
I will say, though, that me and Shlomo, who's in the group right now in Limud Torah, have been learning since I moved to Yerushalayim Bechavrusa, a set of Svarim, 2 volumes from a Rabbi Nachum Markuson on Lashon HaKodesh. And it has they're great Svarim, and it's if you want to improve your Hebrew, they're written in simple English, and they're made for English speakers to go through the basics, Shorashim, and the grammatical rules and verbs and all of that, and it's very useful. It's helped us both improve our Hebrew quite a bit. I mean,
you send us those links or whatever in the
I'll send them to David. I'll send them to David on WhatsApp, and he can pass them along.
Beautiful. Thanks so much. I could really do this for another hour or two right now, but I can't, so I have to leave. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Nice to see you.
Okay.
Right, thanks, guys.
See you, David. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining. We'll see you next week as special. Okay. Also, you should look at this Rashi. So there's no secrets here. What I'm trying to do is what's called, my Rebbe used to call conscious learning. Instead of just reading, we want to consciously analyze the text. So everyone reads. You can ask anyone to read this Rashi. He'll read it. I mean, who knows Hebrew? They'll read it in a minute. You can even read it on the Chabad site and translate it. But if you haven't done the careful analysis, then you don't appreciate what Rashi is going to do for us. Okay, so this is the thing. Now I'll ask you here. Let's now talk about the differences between the first verse and the second. Let's talk about the poel. Okay, what's the difference in the poel from the first verse and the second in lashon? Okay, in language.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like unspecified versus of ish, a man.
Very good. So we have an unspecified actor versus a very specific actor. Okay. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to ask the question now, what does that mean? What does the Torah mean when it does that juxtaposition? Okay. Next, in the pu'ula, what's the difference between the two pesukim?
It sounds like the same thing, but different terminologies for it.
Right. I would say that
one is called.
In
Shemos, go ahead, please. Go ahead, Avi.
In Shemos, it's indicating that it occurred, and in Vayikra, it seems that it's conditional, like you were saying, if it occurs.
Exactly. So that if we have to explain why this is called conditional. If, who needs if? When a man strikes another human being, he should be put to death. What's this if business? Okay.
And that raises serious questions for me. That's like, it's such a weird thing to analyze. There's, if you're going to we're making laws. So how do laws work is if you do something, like it happens, or this person did something. So why would there be two different types of ways of describing it? At the end of the day, if you have a law, I don't understand how there can be a different, like a conditional versus, you would think it would be expressed in the same way. It's
100%. Why do we need a conditional?
Right. Fine.
Just tell me, a man kills another man, we kill him. Finish. What's this if he does? Why do you have that conditional?
Right.
Very important observation. Shinui Lashon again, a change in language. Now let's talk about the victim. So we spoke about the victim pretty extensively. What's the difference between the victim in Shemot and Vayikra?
I think we spoke about how in Shemos it just says ish, a man, and in Vayikra it says kol nefesh adam. Adam is another word for man, but it's a different word. So that's the first question: why use a different word for the man? The second question would be why indicate specifically his nefesh, which seems to be included in Adam, and then why the grammatical seeming redundancy of kol? What does it come to include? Because it's unnecessary grammatically for the syntax to include it. So
great. Results, differences in results. Yeah, David, what's the difference in the result of these two pesukim?
No difference, except for some reason in your
not
translation.
Not the law.
Oh, sorry. The result is one dies, and one is unspecified.
Very good. Okay. And the law is the same.
And
okay.
Wait a second,
so,
and it says
and
umes result. Doesn't that mean like and he dies?
Okay. Why do we need the vav?
Right. Again.
Makaish.
Yeah.
That may be Hebrew. I don't know if you could say makaish mace.
Yeah.
You have to say and that man dies. I think that could be just proper.
Okay, fine. I'm good with that.
I would point out real quickly though
that please.
I know that there's a certain amount of, I don't want to say artifice, but obviously you picked these two psukim which are similar and put them next to each other. But if we were reading the Torah and let's say we didn't have the genius of Rashi, we might not do this work. But ignoring that fact, I would say that the fact that mos yumas is the same in both, I would say that indicates that there is a link. Obviously, I know there's a link because you put it here, but I'm saying ignoring the fact that you put them next to each other, I would say the fact that they both have the same law indicates to us that even though there are discrepancies and differences between these two psukim, if they have the same law, then there must be some similarity between them. We're not talking about, you could say that a maka-ish v'mes, we're not talking about an animal hitting a man, most you must, because why would that be the same level as another man? And then in the other one where we don't have a clear sense of the difference between the victims, right? If the result, meaning if the law is the same, then it would indicate that the result is somewhat similar. It would indicate that the victims are somewhat similar, and it would indicate that the actors are somewhat similar. I don't know if that's solid.
Can I respond to that?
Please do.
I love what you're saying about the link between them because the law is the same. I think when we analyze information, we can say, this person got a green lollipop as a reward, and this guy got a green lollipop as a reward, and therefore there must be some link between what they did potentially. It would be something that would be worth investigating, I would say. But I would say just in terms of Torah, in terms of some of the things I've seen, I wouldn't be surprised here if these were same law and completely different in terms of the case. Yeah.
I'm sure there must be differences, but it's not like it's not like the cases are completely different. Like if you were just reading on the surface of the pasuk, you might not think that they're different at all, right? That's the thing. Once you start breaking down the pasuk, it looks like, wow, these are completely different. Like we don't have an actor in one, we don't have the result in the other. This is not even the same thing. So, but the fact that the law is the same to me indicates that there's a link, and that the discrepancies between the differences between the both are going to indicate some of the depth that probably exists within the interpretation of the Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral law. So I just wanted to point that out.
Doing this method, by the way, you have to understand, doing this method with people, you have to understand,
it's beautiful.
It's not only engages people, it makes them intelligent.
Yeah.
It makes them intelligent readers of the Torah.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. I'm very happy to have this opportunity, with you.
Yeah.
This is something that I developed, and I developed myself. I just did it because I was learning, and I said, wait a minute, this is what the books say. Let me apply it to the Torah. But the fact that I can hand it over to you and see the value of it, because I have to prove, not for myself, I have to prove that what I'm doing is significant in the learning, in the teaching process. Or else what am I doing it for? If I just do this and we just spent time, and you could have done it by yourself anyway, so then I haven't added anything. But if I could show you, if you take this table now and you apply it anywhere, and you're going to engage with the text and see the places where information has to be said, well, then that's going to be a fantastic growth in your learning. Okay.
Yeah,
And that's
it does
really,
seem to me
that's
to
really
be
what I'm.
very useful. It seems to me to be a
It's
very
tool.
useful paradigm. Yeah, for sure.
Fantastic. So we're going to leave it here. Okay.
Can I ask one
Is that
question, a
good?
quick
Or
question?
yes, please.
Just a technical
Yes.
one. This sefer that we were learning up front, is this the
Yes.
actual sefer, or is this your summary of the contents of that sefer?
These are the actual words of the Sefer. From
Oh,
here,
and
and all I did again, but you see, what do I do? When you're reading Rishonim, they compress information in such compact statements that you just read it and you just get a flash of the idea, but you don't
right.
really concentrate on the depth of what the man is saying, because he's saying something so quickly. Okay. So what
He
I
was a
do,
Rishon. He was a Rishon who wrote the sefer.
yes, this is a Rishon.
So what relationship does this have with the Ramchal's Derech Tvunos?
Excellent question. There's two levels of analysis. One which I call common sense, and the other one which I call Torah sense. What do I mean? Every human being has a mind that thinks. He may not be conscious of what he's doing, but he's following rules. If I say to you, all men have legs and Ruvain is a leg, so everyone will say, what's the conclusion of that two statements? Okay, excuse me, all men have legs and Reuben is a man. So the conclusion is Reuben has legs. You don't have to have an education to appreciate that conclusion. You do it naturally. Okay. If it's raining, the streets are wet, right? Now I say to you, it's not, if it's raining, it's not raining. What's the conclusion?
Streets are not wet.
The streets are not wet. Okay, you didn't even learn syllogisms, and you said that. So the Ramchal tells us in his Sefer Derech Tvunos the basic logical formats that language uses to communicate ideas. He talks about statements. They have subjects and predicates, 3 subjects, 11 predicates. He talks about combination of statements, that's called syllogisms, if-thens, classical, 5 different types. And then he talks about how do you prove statements or syllogisms true and false, and how do you disprove them. That's Derech Tvunos. That all is the basic structure of thinking. The Darkei Gemara is involved in the unique, not only the common sense one, but the unique processes that the Gemara goes through. Okay, that's what he's going to add to. For instance, he spells out what to look for in your analysis. The Ramchal, of course, will tell you that the Torah is brief in what it says, and you have to fill out the subjects and the predicates. But here, the Yitzhak Compton is giving us a real definition of what to look out for in a pasuk to plummet into the information. So this is much more Torah oriented. The Ramchal wanted to make a universal system of understanding. He wanted understanding at all, completely. So if you're learning mathematics or the stock exchange or plumbing, whatever you're doing, you can apply his principles. But the Darkei Talmud wants to show how the information in the Torah is presented and how it's analyzed. That's the difference between the two books.
Thank you.
Both of them
Excellent.
are very, very important. Very important.